So today, Dharma friends, we are beginning with the summer teachings that everybody wants to listen to, considers as very important, and takes up various hardships to listen to those teachings. And so the Dharma is very precious because through the Dharma we can become liberated from Samsara, the ocean of suffering. That is why we take refuge. We say I take refuge in the holy Dharma that is free from attachment. So the Dharma becomes the antidote to the attachment to samsaric existence. When we practice the holy Dharma, we become free of clinging to samsara. So therefore we say, I take refuge in the holy Dharma that is free from attachment. And regardless of how extensive the Dharma is explained, the Dharma is always the Dharma. In brief, anything that brings about the benefit of sentient beings is the Dharma. In the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says in the very beginning that the holy Dharma is the source of benefit and happiness. And the accomplishment of Dharma depends on knowing the Dharma practices. Whoever one is, whether one is a scholar or not, or for example, if one follows the scriptural authorities, if one is of highest capacity, then first of all, oneself has become liberated from samsara and is therefore able to show the path to liberation also to others. Or if one is of the middling capacity, one has an understanding of karma and the shortcomings of samsara, and one knows that self-grasping is the cause of all suffering and that the antidote is only bodhicitta. And that's really the ultimate Dharma practice. It is to become free of self-grasping. In the Gongchik, it is said that the 84,000 aggregates of Dharma teachings are all only for the sake of accomplishing awakening. And the Buddha also said that completely tame your own mind. This is the Buddha's teachings. So the teachings are just to tame our own mind. This is the purpose of the 84,000 Dharma teachings. And once the mind becomes pure, that mind itself is Buddha. And there is no other Buddha than one's own mind. So therefore also, Milarepa said to Kambopa, if you believe that there is a Buddha elsewhere apart from your mind, then you are mistaken. What needs to be recognized is one's own mind is actually the Buddha. So there are many levels to the Holy Dharma teachings, and I myself might not have a great understanding of these. But first of all, when I was very young, due to the force of karma, I became a monk. I was given this name, and then difficulties arose in Tibet, and the Dharma completely disappeared. All the texts and so on were destroyed, and we kept in camps like cattle and had to work really hard. So at that time, there was just no opportunity to listen and to really study the Dharma. And so then we were brought to these prison camps due to various conditions by the country, and just like animals had to experience the suffering of enslavement. And so I had to work really hard and endure many hardships. So this is really mainly what I have habituated to, all this hard work and the hardships. But then it is through these difficulties and through the grace of the Holy Dharma that I was able to transform these faults into good qualities. And also they became a method to perfect the practice of patience. So the experience that I have gained is really the kindness of the Dharma. And so in the end, then I understood the workings of karma. It is through the experience of much suffering that I understood the workings of karma. I reflect that, now where do these experiences come from? They come from wrong action, misdeeds. And where do they come from? They come from self-grasping. So I understood that it is self-grasping that I have to destroy. And in order to destroy self-grasping, I need to cultivate an altruistic mind. And Dzogchen Sumgön says, all those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me. So again and again, I reflected on the need to cultivate love and compassion first and foremost for those enemies who hate me and so forth. So I developed great trust in karma, cause and effect. And that is really the ultimate kindness of the Holy Dharma. And so I was given a title by the Jigong Kagyu holiness at that time, and I took refuge in the 3 jewels. And in this way, I was raised from the ocean of Samsara. That was in the beginning. Then in the middle, I endured many hardships and much suffering. And then ultimately, through the Dharma, I cultivated great trust in the workings of karma. And now I'm sharing my personal experiences with my Dharma friends. So some of my Dharma friends like to hear about these experiences that I have gained. So even though I might not be able to teach so well, but I really insist on still doing it for the sake of those people who like to listen. So whether it is from the perspective of the tradition of the Holy Dharma or from the perspective of the worldly ways, we always have a view, practice, and a conduct. And so probably also what I've experienced is all included within that. So now, first of all, regarding the worldly ways, there is a worldly view. The worldly view generally is, I want to be happy. I have a human life. I want to get rich. I want to have a nice house. I want to be happy. That's the worldly view. Then the practice is that I try to get whatever it takes to gain my own benefit, my own victory, without thinking about others. So the worldly way, the worldly practice is that we only think about ourselves and we only think about our own profit, our own victory. And we are not thinking about how this might affect somebody else. We only think about me, me, me. And for example, I need to have a nice place to sit and so on. So that's the practice. And then the activity, the conduct is that, so because we only think about ourselves, naturally in our actions, that will lead to harming others. And mostly we don't even recognize that. We harm them unknowingly. And some also harm others knowingly, like when they kill someone. But some just naturally, in whatever they do, harm others. It's just when the state of mind is in this selfish state or a harsh state, then naturally also, for example, what we say to others will be harsh. So whatever we do it only to benefit us. And that leads to harm toward others naturally. So that's the conduct or the action And the result of that is that if we consider ourselves as most important, then whatever we do will be based on the 6 afflictive emotions. And now we are in the 3 higher realms due to love, and this love slowly degenerates, and then we go lower and lower and lower, and then eventually we take birth in the 3 lower realms. And yet our Buddha nature still never becomes spoiled. Then again, due to various causes and conditions, we might engage in action with love and compassion, and again take birth in the higher realms. And then again, this love declines steadily, and again we take birth in the 3 lower realms. So this is what we call samsara, or cyclic existence. We keep going around in circles, just like a wheel of a chariot, or a wheel of a car, or a train, or like an engine of a jet plane, and so on. A wheel represents something that is endless. There is no end to a wheel. It just keeps turning and turning. And that's the nature of samsara. So it is due to the worldly view that we have come to wander in this cycle of existence. So then all those who possess some intelligence, they understand that now we want to be happy in this life, and we don't want to suffer. But then, so that is something that we can understand because we are human beings. As human beings, we have an ability to understand and to express meaning. That's kind of a defining characteristic of a human. And so what we can understand is that we know that self and other, what we have in common is that we want to be happy, and we do not want to suffer. And yet there are some who achieve that, and then there's others who, even though they try, they still only find suffering. And then there's others who don't try much and they find happiness. So the accomplishment of happiness and suffering is uncertain. And it's obvious that we do not have much control over it in this life. So then when you think about it, you realize that it's because of the mind. The seeds are within the mind. The mind determines the karma that was created. And so the mind is something that we cannot directly see or perceive, but then it engages in activity. And so therefore the Buddha had said, completely tame your own mind, because the seeds of happiness and suffering are within the mind, and they have been created in many previous lives over a long period of time. So it is, happiness and suffering is nothing that comes about just momentarily right now. If you want to be happy, you just create it, or if you don't want to suffer, you just get rid of it. It doesn't happen like that, but it's something that has been created over the course of many, many lifetimes. And so therefore the Buddha had said, all phenomena depend or arise in dependence on their causes. Everything arises from a cause. So in the Buddha's summarize the meaning of the Buddha's words, especially for a teacher like myself, to put it in simple terms. Also for you Dharma friends who are listening, what is the essence of the Buddha's teachings, the Buddha's words? The Buddha said, do not commit any wrong. And for that, the mind is most important, the motivation that is behind all the activities of body and speech. So with that in mind, we have to abandon all harm toward others. And when we do that, then that is what we have purified negativities. So whatever you do comes back to you. Sakya Pandita said, it's just like throwing like a rock in the sky. It will fall back onto your head. It will hit you back. So when you harm others, then it will come back to you. It will fall back upon you. So in the form of suffering. So if you do not want to experience suffering, then the Buddha said next, perfectly practice virtue. And what is virtue? It is anything that is done that brings about the benefit and happiness of others, that is respectful toward others, and so forth. All of that is what we call the cause of benefit for others is what we call virtues. And virtue leads to birth in the three higher realms. So virtue is said to be virtues in the beginning, in the middle, and in the end. Virtues in the beginning refers to this lifetime. So if you have virtues in this lifetime, then in this lifetime, you will have, for example, positive companions, and your actions will be positive. And as a result of that, secondly, virtues in the middle means that you will attain the happiness of the three higher realms in future lifetimes. And then virtues in the end means that if you continue to engage in actions motivated by love and compassion, then eventually your love becomes very strong and self-grasping disappears. And as a result of that, you attain the ultimate happiness, which is the state of enlightenment. And that is virtues in the end. So virtues in the beginning, middle, and end. Perfectly practice virtue. And when it comes to practicing virtue, again, the body and the speech are not most important. What's most important is the mind. The Buddha said, completely tame your own mind. If your mind is tamed, then your body and speech will naturally be tamed. So this is the Buddha's teaching. This is the essence of the Buddha's teachings. It is to tame our own mind, to purify our own mind. So to tame one's own mind, this is the Buddha's teaching. So all of the Buddha's teachings are an antidote to the three poisons. That is what it means to tame the mind. So in the mind, we have attachment, anger, ignorance. And the root of these afflictions is ignorance. Because we are ignorant, we develop attachment. Because we are ignorant, we get angry. So it all comes back to ignorance. And the teachings, in brief, consist of the twofold truth. So the relative truth refers to the time where we see a duality of self and other. And at that time, love and compassion are the causes of happiness. So once we become a Buddhist, once we have taken the refuge vow, there is this prayer that we make. We say, may all beings have happiness, the causes of happiness. So may all beings have happiness. What is your happiness now? That happiness has a cause. So may they have happiness and the causes of happiness. If you want to experience happiness, you need to create the cause. You need to think about that. So what is the cause of your happiness? It is love and compassion, the relative bodhicitta. It is called the relative because it refers to the time where we perceive a duality of self and other. And for as long as you perceive things this way, we experience a great variety of happiness and suffering and the ripening of various karmas. Lord Jigten Sumgön said in the Gongchik, karma, cause and effect, is the natural expression of the moment-to-moment thoughts. So the 6 afflictive emotions are within the mind. And therefore, the 6 realms of samsara the mind is the basis of those 6 realms of samsara. And then, as a result, various kinds of illness and suffering and so forth manifest. Some beings are as large as a mountain, some are as small as a water drop, some don't even have a form. The Buddha taught about 3 realms of samsara, where beings experience suffering. And it all is rooted in ignorance. And ignorance is this notion of an I, a me. So to tame that, the cause of happiness is love and compassion. It is the compassion that is infused with love. And for that to arise, we have to remember the kindness of others and also the wish to repay their kindness. And that we begin by thinking about our kind mother. And so then this small love that we have is developed. It becomes great love. So we always make this prayer, may beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. And then may they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. What is your suffering? So you think about that. And then also your suffering has a cause. And that cause is within the mind. It is nowhere external. It is nowhere outside of you. And it is like the seed of a flower. Various flowers appear in different colors, and they all have a very specific seed. When we look at the seed, we might think it's nothing. We don't see the flower. But if you really think about it, you can really see the correspondence to that to your mind, how it is just like that with your mind. Within the mind, we have those seeds of suffering. And ultimately, that is this concept of me, there's an I, there's self-grasping. So that is the cause of all suffering. From this self-grasping, the 3 poisons or the 5 poisons arise. Or like 5 poisons, and we add to them stinginess and jealousy, or we talk about the 6 afflictive emotions. And even more extensive, the 84,000 afflictive emotions. It is also explained in the Samantabhadra prayer. And so when this karma ripens, it is just like the seed of a flower ripening into various different kinds of flowers. So this is the result of the great variety of sentient beings in the 6 realms of samsara. So therefore, Dzogchen Sumgön said, karma, cause and effect is the natural expression of moment-to-moment thoughts. So if you think about karma in this way, then what comes to mind are the 6 realms of samsara and the various appearances. And then think about the cause that leads to these appearances. And again, you come back to the mind. So when we think about this, so you think about the cause of happiness and the cause of suffering. For example, when we think about the cause of happiness in this world, for example, to give a small example, there is a family who experiences well-being. They are able to make a living. They are harmonious, and they experience a happy life. So this is what we call the happiness of this life. And what is the cause of it? Having practiced generosity, as a result, one will find material wealth. Having practiced ethical discipline, as a result, one finds a precious human body. Having practiced patience, as a result, one finds harmonious friends, one experiences a long lifespan, beautiful appearance, and so forth. So all the qualities of the higher realms arise from generosity, ethical conduct, and patience. And these three practices arise from love. So think about this very carefully, that you realize that this is the cause. This love is the only cause of happiness. And so then the cause of suffering, some people in the world experience a lot of suffering. So when you understand the cause of suffering, you will naturally turn away from it. We can see in this world some people experience the suffering of hungry ghosts, of hunger and thirst, which is due to stinginess. So we have to think about it very carefully. Then we are able to recognize the actual causes of suffering. So what is the cause of suffering then? When you see the suffering of others, you should recognize the corresponding afflictive emotions of that within your own mind stream. Even the most subtlest of affliction, you should recognize it is due to this that happens. And if you engage in action, if you accumulate karma with this afflictive emotion, then this will be the result. So once you have understood that, you can also share that with others, explain that to others. So first you gain a personal experience, and through that you develop trust, and then you can introduce that to others and say, this is the cause of suffering. If you understand that, you will be able to accept whatever difficulties you face in this life. And you will recognize that I need to abandon my own afflictive emotions in order to avoid suffering. You will be able to create the causes of happiness, generosity, ethical conduct, and patience. So this state of mind then arises. So when the relative bodhicitta arises, when trust in karma arises, then you have understood this line of may beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. And then we say in the same prayer, may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. So then on the ultimate level, when you tame your mind again and again, you become free from self-grasping. You become free from self-grasping when you give rise to love and compassion. And when love and compassion become immeasurable. And they become immeasurable, they become boundless if you think about the suffering of sentient beings throughout the 6 periods of day and night. And if you always think, may they be free from suffering. So if you're able to always think of sentient beings suffering in this way, immeasurable love arises within your mind. And the more this arises in your mind, the more the self-grasping diminishes. So when self-grasping diminishes, the mind becomes boundless. So then you attain this state of great equanimity. You recognize the ultimate truth. So again, you recognize the ultimate truth through immeasurable love and compassion. Through that, self-grasping disappears. And when there is no more concept of self and other, the mind becomes like space, and you recognize the ultimate truth. And so this is what we are introduced to here. And it is given, the ultimate truth is given many different names, such as Mahamudra or Dzogchen, Madhyamaka, the middle way, according to the scriptures. But when one realizes the ultimate truth, then everything is realized, the nature of all phenomena. So Thigten Sumgön had also said in a Gongchik that what the Buddha taught is nothing but the natural state of all phenomena, of how things really are, the nature of the mind, really. And Milarepa had said, apart from realizing the nature of mind, there is no other perfection of wisdom than that. And the omniscient Longchen Rabcham had said in the Mengazu, the Treasury of Pith Instructions, when you realize the nature of mind, there is no higher learning than that. So these two quotes I came across, which are very fitting. And so ultimately, we have to realize the nature of the mind. And so even though there is much to be said about that in the scriptures, if you're someone like myself without much learning, I found that this text by Chagme Raga Asya is very meaningful. Chagme Raga Asya had great compassion. He taught this text and his teachings in a very common language, not a very sophisticated, high standard language, but in a very common way, so in an ordinary way, so ordinary people could understand it. So his teachings are therefore easy to understand for people like myself. And still, there are some parts within that I also might not clearly understand. And so for that, we have Ken Rinpoche here, and you can ask questions. There are many things that I actually don't know, but because I love you all very much, I want to benefit you by sharing what I do know. And so what is also unique about this text is that it is widely spread, also because it is a teaching that really transcends lineages. It is really like Rime. It is without bias toward any lineage. And so this is the text I am about to introduce you to. So the text is an instruction on the union of Mahamudra and Dzogchen, whereby Mahamudra and Dzogchen are practiced together. Then there is some others who often explain Mahamudra and Dzogchen as being separate teachings. And that is because on the one hand, they are in a way separate, different, because they provide different skillful means of practice. There are different approaches in terms of practice when we practice Mahamudra and Dzogchen. However, the ultimate result is one and the same. Now, the term Mahamudra, the word explained etymologically is that, so in Tibetan it is Chagya Chimbum, and Chag is explained to be the empty wisdom. So Chag also means to be homage, paying homage to the empty primordial wisdom. It is empty, and yet there is awareness, there is wisdom. So it is empty like space. It is the mind that is free of all thinking, is like space. And this space-like nature also possesses an aspect of clarity, clear knowing awareness, an awareness that is aware of its empty nature. And the quality of this clear empty nature is that it is free from the faults of eternalism and nihilism. And for this reason, no one can find a fault within it. There is no philosophical viewpoint in the world that could find a fault in the Buddhist view because it is free from eternalism and nihilism. It is free from eternalism due to its empty essence. It is like space, according also to the Heart Sutra, for example. And it is free from the extreme of nihilism due to its clear awareness, its clear nature. So for this reason, it is free of all faults. And now this clarity and empty nature, are that those two separate things? They are not. They are a unity. There is clear and empty. And that's the first word, chak. And ya means to be liberated, released from the knots or the bonds of samsara. So when there is no more dualistic grasping, when the bonds or the knots of samsara become released. In the very beginning of the 37 Bodhisattva practices, therefore it says, having realized that phenomena neither come nor go. So within space, there is no coming and there is no going. If there is a duality, then there's coming and going. There's going around in circles. There's conflict. Because when there is a dualistic perception of self and other, then many dualistic thoughts arise. And then these thoughts get into conflict with one another. For example, scientific reflection and so forth. So that is the cause. So that is the kind of the way the term Mahamudra is explained. So the clear and empty nature and the release of the bonds of samsara. And then the term Dzogchen is, Dzog means to complete or perfect. And it is explained that all phenomena of samsara and nirvana are complete within one's own mind, are perfectly complete within one's own mind. And that is why Dzog, or complete, perfected. And in the Mahamudra teachings, we speak about the space-like nature of the mind. It actually has the same meaning because there is nothing that is not complete within space. There's nothing that is not encompassed by space. All phenomena of samsara and nirvana can fit within space. It is said that everything arises from emptiness and everything dissolves back into emptiness. Things appear temporarily, just like illusions. For example, this world, this planet, first there is a formation, it comes into existence, then there is a period of abiding, and then in the end it comes to destruction. So first, due to some temporary and momentary imprints, the world comes into being. The infinite outer universe appears, and then it abides, it remains for some time due to these imprints, and in the end, one day, it will come to an end, which is also something that science now understands. And what science understands is also due to wisdom. Thich Nhat Hanh said that whatever is done in the field of knowable things is done by the Buddha. It's actually done by wisdom. It's an aspect of wisdom. It is just, it depends on which way we utilize this wisdom. But whatever we use it for, that field of knowledge can be known because it is wisdom. It is just that science are using this wisdom aspect just for worldly purposes, even though the essence is still wisdom, but it is utilized for worldly purposes, and therefore it is still bound to dualistic grasping. But then if you actually examine the nature of this wisdom awareness, then it is also called the wisdom that transcends the mundane. And this wisdom becomes the perfection of wisdom. Otherwise, if it remains the mundane wisdom, it does not become the perfection of wisdom, because there still is a concept of self and other, of me. And so in any case, it is this mind within which everything is complete. So therefore, Dzog. And Chen means great. Great because there is no greater, no higher path, no than that. It is the supreme path. So it is given many different names like that, Mahamudra and Dzogchen and so forth. So there are different terms, and within their practices there are different approaches, different ways of practicing. But the ultimate result is only to realize the nature of the mind, nothing else. So the ultimate result is one and the same. And once you have realized the nature of mind, that nature is unchanging. And it is given the name, again, different names, such as Vajradhara or Samantabhadra and so forth. So the ultimate result of Mahamudra and Dzogchen is the same. And if you understand that, then that will eliminate different doubts and thoughts in your mind. So this text, the union of Mahamudra and Dzogchen, what is actually the purpose of teaching this text? So there are two reasons for teaching this text. Number one is that Chagme Rinpoche's teachings are very easy to understand, also for ordinary people who do not have much learning. And he taught it in this way out of his great compassion. And number two is that in this world, many teachers have taught the Dharma. Many teachers have appeared, like His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And so we have received their teachings and have gained some understanding of the teachings. And then due to that, many questions arise when it comes to meditation practice. And this text really contains the answers to all of those questions. There are many of you who are meditators, and then there are some who don't know much about meditation, but who have learned some about calm abiding or shamatha and vipassana. And so in relation to meditation practice, many questions have arisen, and that is the second reason I'm teaching this text. So in Dzogchen, for example, we speak about 4 appearances, and in Mahamudra we speak about the four yogas of Mahamudra. And these are also related to the practices of the channels, winds, and drops, where we experience 4 kinds of joy. So there's much interconnection, actually. So the 4 yogas of Mahamudra are single-pointedness, freedom from elaboration, one taste, and non-meditation. And these also correspond to the stages that we progress when we progress through the bhumis and the paths. What Thich Somgön had also said that the seed, the prior seed, is contained within the next moment, or the next seed. So, for example, what that means in the context of the 4 yogas is that once we reach the highest level of single-pointedness, we have already reached the lowest level of freedom from elaboration. So they're interconnected in this way. So therefore also Mipam Rinpoche said that when you understand the nature, then the levels or the stages are like the sky, like space. So it is not like progressing in a linear way on the ground. But what it means is that when we progress along the stages and the paths, then what increases is the experience that we have gained through our practice. It just becomes more deep, more profound. And so as we progress along the bhumis and the paths, it becomes increasingly easy to tame our thoughts and afflictive emotions, which actually is a sign of having traversed the bhumis and the paths. So it is a progression of a single experience. They're not different kind of states. For example, when we speak about it in terms of the Bodhisattva's path and we reach the first bhumi, then at this point we have gained stability in immeasurable love. And then as one progresses further, then that stability increases. It becomes increasingly more stable. So that is what is meant with when you know the nature, it is like you're progressing through the sky. So it's not in a linear way in terms of places. So that's the way in which we progress through the stages and the paths. And so this is how it is explained in terms of in relation to the 4 yogas of Mahamudra. So then the text begins with homage to Mahamudra. When the Gelong Gamarinchen shared his realization with me, this was my response. Although my level of realization and experience is not high, for I, the old monk Raga Asya, am not of highest acumen, I have nevertheless experienced meditation for quite some time. So he's saying, I do not have high realization, but for a long time I have meditated, I have practiced and endured hardships, so I have a lot of experience. When the bliss of great one-pointedness is experienced, even though a condition of non-distraction exists, it doesn't last, for meditative experiences drive it away. So, so regarding one-pointedness that is experienced, one-pointedness is experienced when one attains stability in meditation, the meditation of calm abiding. So one has the ability to abide for any given period of time. So in one-pointedness, thoughts are recognized with clear awareness, and one gains increasing stability in not becoming controlled by the thoughts. And the 4 yogas of Mahamudra are also related to the 4 levels of empowerment that we receive. So one-pointedness is related to the base empowerment. Many of you disciples have received many empowerments. So here's also a connection. And so single-pointedness is related to the base empowerment, where we single-pointedly visualize. And so in single-pointedness, we develop an ability to always sustain clear awareness and to not become controlled by thoughts and afflictive emotions. So here, eventually, clear awareness is held with stability. And so for as long as we have not reached that state, for us, for example, now, we do recognize our thoughts, but then we still become controlled by them. So when one accomplishes single-pointedness, then one does not become controlled by thoughts anymore. So this is how it was taught by the masters, that in single-pointedness, clear awareness is held with stability. And so when you're able to do that, you then recognize that now I have understood, I have realized that view of single-pointedness. Because when afflictive emotions arise, I instantly recognize them and they cannot control me. So this is when you know that you have attained single-pointedness. And when you attain the great single-pointedness, you are able to remain within a meditative state for any given period of time. And what then happens when you remain within meditation is an experience of bliss arises. So now reflect on that, on the single-pointedness of awareness, and also discuss it with each other. And when you hear these instructions, you should meditate and look at your mind. Do not just follow the words, but really experience them and look at your mind and see how it really happens in your own mind. So So in this way, they recognize now I'm distracted, or now I'm able to abide still, and so on. So reflect in this way during the break time. So we take a break of 30 minutes.